Welcome to Coping Together, Mental Health Association of Central Florida's live web series dedicated to helping you develop coping strategies and wellness tools related to COVID-19, as well as talk about mental health. Coping Together was created in response to COVID-19's mandatory social distancing orders. This show seeks to learn and educate. We do not speak for any particular group. Overall, Coping Together serves as a platform through which we can demystify and unpack mental health concepts and hear from experts in the field. Please note that this show may discuss sensitive topics, including but not limited to sexual assault, suicide, and various traumas. If you find yourself feeling upset or struggling during any episode, listen to your body and pause the input. We will post related resources. Remember, it's okay to get help.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Coping Together. I'm your host, Faith, with the Mental Health Association of Central Florida, here to talk to you about mental health and all things related to COVID-19 as we get through this time period together. Today, I'm very excited, really excited actually, to introduce our guest, Oleg Lougheed. He is the founder of Overcoming Odds. You may have seen his TED Talk or anything like that, but he's just wonderful, inspirational person. And today we're here to talk about reframing adversity into opportunity. So with that, I'm going to introduce Oleg. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm excited to have this conversation, so I'm doing pretty well.
Absolutely.
So for our audience who may be not necessarily familiar, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself, your organization, and what you do?
Absolutely. So, well, first of all, I'll have to say that I appreciate you for even having me as a guest and creating the space to begin with. You know, when it comes to myself, in a nutshell, the best way that I could answer that question of who are you, which is a very complicated question to begin with, but it's 3 years ago, I started an organization called Overcoming Odds. And the reason why I chose to even name it in that way is because I believe when I started to look back at my own life, and all the experiences that I have had, including being born in a foreign country and having faced a set of challenges and circumstances that were very difficult to overcome, I believe that that's what my life has been. It's been about finding ways to overcome whatever the challenges may be in front of me, and yet continue to find that inspiration and motivation to keep going. And so that's really what I wanted to do, is create a space for other people to be able to come together, share their own stories, and know that regardless of where they're at along that story, there's always a way, as long as there's a will, to get through whatever the obstacle that might be in front of them.
That's a really powerful, I think, message to get across to people. I think that's wonderful that that's something you do. When you mentioned that people are able to, share a little about their story or getting through that, how do they go about getting involved with your organization, or how does it work?
You know, the best way, there are a couple ways that people can, I think, become a part of the work. And that is one of the things that when we started the organization, one of the biggest objectives I wanted to accomplish was to have a lot of the work be remote. And the reason why is because I didn't want it to be tied down to a specific physical location that people had to access, but rather anyone can access from any part of the world. And so the very first stage that we chose to build is we wanted to build a space, and this is primarily done through our website, where people are able to come in and share their stories. We've even developed a questionnaire for people who do not feel comfortable nor feel like they have the language to be able to put it into a flowing narrative when it comes to their story. And the reason why we chose to do that, and the reason why it's a big, so to say, pillar of what we do, is I believe in the power of your story. I believe in the power of your story because, in my opinion, everything starts with the inner narrative. So whatever the story, whatever the world that I choose to build internally is going to be the world that I experience outside of it. And so that's really what we started to do, is we wanted to create that space. It's almost like a blog form, if you think about it that way. And then beyond that, what we started is we expand it into other mediums. Podcasts, events, weekly calls, just other opportunities for people to be able to come together and not only better understand their own individual experiences and journeys, but also those who are walking next to them.
I really think that that's a powerful thing. I know I keep saying powerful, but to me, it really is, because that sense of when you go through something, and I always think it's important to say that whatever someone's gone through, it's the worst, it's their story. It's the worst thing they've gone through. No one can compare it because it's your own unique subjective experience.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I think going through something, whatever your story might be, having that sense of empathy, of understanding that, I think, whatever happens to someone truly impacts them, and you can have that respect for the person's situation, not only helps you with your own situation, but helps you moving forward with being understanding of other people. Would you say that that's about right?
I would say so. And one other thing I'll add on to that is, in my opinion, I believe we're all reflections of one another. So in a way, it's almost as if I'm looking in a mirror through another person's experience, and yet I'm able to see my own. One of the things that it took me a while to understand is that when it comes to a lot of these overarching themes of love, acceptance, belonging, and whatever else it may be, I've realized that there's an interesting thread, and that is the difference is the actual experience that you might have had when it comes to that topic. But the common theme is that I believe we're all able to experience different elements of it. It just happens at a different time or a different place in life. And so for me, what really clicked is I wanted to create that space where I can come together with other people who have gone through similar challenges. Because at the end of the day, and I don't know what your experience has been in life, I'm assuming it's been relatively similar, that this concept of challenges and obstacles, it doesn't stop. There is no endpoint. And so there was far too often in life where I tried to eliminate the challenges, right? I wanted to find ways to completely eliminate every single hardship that I had. And then I just realized that that's not really a reality. And I think part of the work that you guys do as well, that's also in connection to what we're talking about today, and that's even this concept of depression and anxiety and stress. In my opinion, you can't eliminate those things. So then it becomes about, how do I find and how do I develop the tools that are going to help me cope with those things, rather than eliminate something that's just part of the human journey. It's always going to be there. It always has been there, and it will always be there beyond that. So I think platforms like this are very important to have, because they allow and create a space for others to understand that if this is something that's going to be a part of my journey for the rest of my life, therefore it is in my advantage to find ways to cope with it moving forward.
I really like that. I really like that you're saying that, like you said, it is always going to be there with you. And I think some of us try, and those where defense mechanisms come into play. We try to shut out the past. We try to, like my own personal experience, I've really felt like when I was younger, I got to college, and, you get to around that age and you feel like you know everything, or you have your whole life figured out. Like, I've been through stuff. It's fine. It's in the past. And when I really started looking at it, I remember it was just one instance, and it was the first time I ever really looked at it. It completely changed my life experience, because all those things are still there. But it's like you're saying, you're not finding a way to get over it. You're not finding a way to forget about it. You're finding a way to move forward from it. And I always say that, or my own personal belief is that whatever you've been through, you have the opportunity. And I think that this kind of falls in line with what you're saying, that you're in charge of the story moving forward. You're in charge of, oh, sorry, I don't know if that came through, but that was a call from my phone.
Good.
Sorry. But sorry, so that's just my perspective. Does that kind of fall into what you're saying? It
does, and one other thing that I'll mention in regard to it, and I think this is a perfect segue into this topic of adversity to begin with. So I believe, in my opinion, that adversity is not only a necessary step when it comes to my own life, but it's also one of the greatest teachers. The reason why I believe that is because I remember when I reflected back upon my own life and the different adversities that I faced to this date, I realized that there were certain situations where I was continuously being sucked into that adversity. So a challenge comes up and I'm immediately in it without having the ability to remove myself and really understand, why is this happening and what am I here to learn? What I realized over time was when I started to ask myself such questions of, what is this here to teach me and what am I here to learn? My experience and my relationship with adversity completely changed. It transformed into a space where I was no longer in a way, quote unquote, victim, but in the way a victor or a hero. And so I was able to really step into it with an open mind. I will say that in asking myself such questions during adverse circumstances of what am I here to learn and what is this here to teach me, I've also realized that it not only elevated my level of self-awareness, and that is being able to observe whatever is at hand, but also it has reduced levels of stress, anxiety, depression. And the reason why I think that has happened is because I was able to develop almost like a bird's eye view when it came to a lot of those circumstances and look at each and every single one of them with the perspective that this is no longer happening to me, but rather it's happening for me. I have an opportunity to really take an introspective approach to this and try and understand what am I here to learn? Because one of the things that I've learned, and I would be also curious to hear your perspective on this as well, but when it comes to life and the different events and the people that I've even met, I believe each and every single one of them has value to offer. Even in the situations where you might be sitting there and you're disagreeing with every single word that the person says, there is still something that you can learn about yourself. Why do you feel the discomfort? What about the language do you not feel comfortable with? What are you truly disagreeing with? And so I think adversity, when it comes to that topic, it presents the same exact thing. In fact, in sitting in those conversations where you might be disagreeing with the individual, that's a form of adversity that you're experiencing. So that's really what I wanted to focus on when it came to my life, and in regard to the space that you and I are sharing right now. That's the biggest thing I wanted to share with people is no matter how adverse the circumstances may be, for me, what has worked, it is that question of what am I here to learn and what is this here to teach me?
Thank you for sharing, your perspective on that. And I think that that's a really great point of, really, I definitely think it is. Even for people who necessarily haven't been through a trauma or things like that, it's something that you can take moving forward in your life. I always do say that the people that come into your life for a reason, for some kind of a lesson or a purpose, whether it's they learn from you, you learn from them, hopefully vice versa. But I definitely agree with you that it's kind of like, it seems like it's a process of looking inward at yourself of kind of what can I take away from this situation? And then moving forward from that, it's, again, I think having that, I come back to the word empathy a lot of the time, with just being empathetic moving forward for what other people are going through, but also recognizing that you've been through your own things.
And everything has value, right? Everything has value. Everything has an opportunity to teach you something that you may not have known before. I think the same thing is true of people. That whole concept of people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. I believe it's true because I've had people in my life that were there at the very beginning of my journey that may not be there today and that may not be there tomorrow. But it doesn't mean that those people do not have value and purpose. And maybe that's the beauty of just the life in general that all of us are able to experience, is that we have an opportunity to sit down and ask ourselves, what is that purpose that the person had in my life? What's the impact? What is the reason for why X, Y, and Z came into it? To a degree, I think, at least in my experience, I've been able to find answers to some, not for all. And maybe that means that reason hasn't happened yet.
I was actually just like maybe you're still, still processing and figuring
exactly.
it out.
Maybe that purpose is going to come 5 or 10 years down the road. You never know. But I think the ability to be open-minded, and that's something in regard to adversity as well as a key component, like choosing to step into it and know that you don't have all the answers. And there's so much that's unknown in life and in this world, but yet you have the ability to learn. You have the ability to develop a different perspective every single day, every single minute, in fact. Every single conversation I have, I try and look at it through the lens of, this is an opportunity for me to not only learn about the other person, but also learn about myself. Because like you and I started this conversation, I believe that at the end of the day, that person is just a walk-in reflection of who I am.
So you believe in the concept, I guess, as we get older, that we surround ourselves with people who are like us, like people are a reflection of, or like our friends especially are a reflection of who we are?
I think so. I do believe in that. And the reason why I believe in it is because I think internally, the different behaviors and the thoughts that I've been able to observe are almost the same exact things that I'm surrounded by when it comes to my friends and colleagues. And those things change over time. My interests were not always the same. My interests were not always this. And so over the years, I've realized that because my interests changed, my friend groups also changed. And so there becomes an important point, at least for me, in understanding that if that is something that is going to happen, as far as this concept of whatever the inner world that I choose to build within me is going to essentially replicate itself outside of it, then I have to be very cautious of what is that inner world that I'm building? What's the language that I'm using with myself? What are the thoughts that I'm having? And which of those thoughts am I actively choosing to act upon? And then beyond that, that becomes my external world. Those become my friends. Those become my colleagues, as well as community members.
That's something that I really definitely agree with is a lot of this it's an internal thing. So, for example, I know plenty of people, and I myself have struggled with anxiety, depression, things like that. And something that people have said to me is a lot of it comes, I mean, that's the process of, I think, cognitive therapy to a certain extent is that shift in your thoughts, that it's about, thinking about you are good, you do deserve good things. And moving forward from that, like you said, it's reflected or hopefully reflected in your actions and in the people in your life. You think that you're, regardless of what you've been through, everybody deserves a fair life. Everybody deserves a chance to be loved and be successful. And the thing that I keep hearing you say that I just really, I think, resonate with is that concept that you're saying of you have the ability, you have that choice, because I think it's a powerful thing that we, regardless of, again, what we've been through or what we maybe necessarily haven't been through yet, I think that's the beauty of life is that at the end of the day, it is our own unique experience and we create our own story.
Yeah. And I think there's something beautiful within that. And to kind of continue on the thread of, power, there is power in choice. There's power in choice. And I think the beauty of this journey that, in my opinion, we're all able to experience. Now, how we go through it is completely different conversation. But what I'll mention is that we, in my opinion, we do have that choice in looking at our circumstances differently. I'm a huge believer that whatever the circumstances I was born into do not have to be the same circumstances that I live out today. Like you can go, I use this concept of, deck of cards analogy. And that is whatever cards I was dealt to begin with when I came into this world do not have to be the same cards that I hold in today. That deck is always accessible to me. So I can go in it, I can reshuffle the deck, and I can pick a new set of cards. And I think it's the same exact thing when it comes to trauma and adversity and these challenging circumstances, not only about our past, that's 5, 10, 20 years ago, but also about yesterday or even about today. One of the things that I've learned was in stepping into this work of choosing to put myself out there and create a space for other people to be heard and to be appreciated through their stories. What I realized over time was that in putting myself out there, I'm not only putting myself out there in front of people who might be drawn to the mission that we've chosen to create, but also I'm putting myself out there for people who may express perspectives and opinions that don't fully align with who I am. When we talk about this concept of negative feedback and criticism and how those two elements alone can kind of set you off track of what you intended to build to begin with, I think there's an interesting balance between choosing to understand and depersonalize those messages as these are not direct attacks onto you. You're not actually doing anything wrong. You just happen to be an outlet, kind of like right place, right time for an individual to process whatever it is that they're going through. I can't tell you the number of times on a daily basis I receive messages like that. I no longer look at them the same exact way. Was there a time that I did? Absolutely. And I think that's the powerful part to acknowledge within this is that there's beauty in this journey, and all of it is real. One of the challenges that I think reframing mindset presents is that, yes, it gives you the opportunity to reframe certain circumstances, but in a way, I also think it's a double-edged sword, because in reframing those things, there have been times when I look back in my past and I would literally tell myself, man, I can't believe I was that, or I can't believe I did that. And so it's part of that journey. I'm going back into kind of blaming myself or shaming myself for the different things that I was, when in reality, those are the things that I had to be in order to get to where I am today. So I think each and every single one of the experiences, they're real. They're not any less than compared to whatever else that's coming or that's ahead of you. And that's, I think, one of the biggest things that I've been able to acknowledge is everything that I've been through to date has value. Every single person that I've met to date has value. Negative, positive, whatever the experience has been, it has taught me something that I did not know before.
Again, I just really appreciate you in the way that you share your story and are so open. I think that it's a great way to start a conversation for a lot of people. And I love what your organization does. One thing that I heard you say that I kind of want to come back to for a second is, whether it's you've been through something or you've made a mistake, I think something that a lot of people struggle with, and I want to ask you if that's kind of a part of that reframing again, and from adversity and opportunity, is that concept of forgiving yourself for mistakes you've made, or maybe if you have been, experienced some kind of a trauma or anything, shifting it from, looking at it as maybe you might feel like you didn't handle it the best way, or you look back and say, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. Is that concept of forgiving yourself, is that a part of the process, I guess is what I'm asking?
For me, it is. And the reason why is because hindsight is always 20/20.
Yeah.
Right? You can always look back at each and every single one of the circumstances or events that you've had in your life and think about ways that you could have done things differently. I think that's always been there and will always be there as far as that opportunity goes. Mistakes are part of the journey. For me, when I started to kind of tackle this topic of failure to begin with, I realized that failure is just another opportunity to learn. That just because I failed at something, it doesn't mean that I've hit kind of the end point to that journey. It more so, I think, it gives me an opportunity to take a step back and ask myself the question of, what could I have done differently, or what could I do differently? So mistakes are going to happen. In fact, they happen a lot more for me as I choose to embark on different chapters of it that are completely unknown. Foreign lands. I step into something, I have no idea what that thing may be. So the chances of you making a mistake are significantly high. But I think the difference is that, how do you choose to view that mistake? And what do you choose to do with it? Do you look at it as something that is inevitable? Something that is meant to be a part of that journey, regardless of what chapter you might be on in your life? Or do you choose to beat yourself down for it and beat yourself up and look at it through the lens of, I can't believe I did that? Because in reality, you don't know what you don't know. So, and that's the thing that I've realized, is that the more that I continue to step onto this path, there was so much that's unknown. Therefore, the opportunities for me to make mistakes and kind of fall on my butt however many times, it's a thing. Like, it happens. It's part of the human process. If there were no mistakes, then I don't know what would be the joy in the journey. I don't know where the opportunities for one to reflect and be proud of the different things that they've been able to overcome or work through would come if mistakes were non-existent. And let's face it, if there were no mistakes, then we'll be perfect human beings living in a perfect world.
That's just kind of boring.
Right. Exactly. Right. You've got to have some obstacles. You've got to have those courses along the way that you have no idea how you're going to manage or what vehicle you're even going to drive on them, but yet you're going to find a way to work through it. So I think it's all part of the journey. And one other thing that I'll mention is that it's one beautiful experience that we're able to go through. And, Far too often in life for me, I used to take things for granted. I used to take things for granted because I didn't really understand this concept of time and how precious it really is. For the longest time, I viewed, and I think part of it had to do with the way that the society, at least the way that I understood things that the society presented in front of me. And that is, there's this expectancy that you're going to live up to 80 or 90 or 100 years. When in reality, none of that is guaranteed. Not even the next minute is guaranteed. And so because of it, I remember I would take certain things for granted, such as calling my parents or calling my best friends, because I thought that, well, if they're here today, they were there yesterday, therefore they're going to be there tomorrow. So I'll just call them tomorrow. Well, as I'm sure that you might have learned throughout your own journey as well, that story of tomorrow, it's a never-ending story. That concept that I'll do it tomorrow. What actually ended up happening for me was that tomorrow literally turned into tomorrow. And then it turned into a month down the road, a year down the road, and then I never did the action. And so there's a danger in postponing certain things, because one other thing, it's a huge unknown, is we never know when we're going to take our last breath. We never know when we're going to have that last conversation or see someone or hear someone else's voice. And so that's where I think opportunities like this are critical in being able to honestly talk about the journey for what it is, and also understand that there's so much that's unknown. And so if there's something that needs to be said, if there's something that needs to be expressed to yourself or to whoever else, I just encourage people to do it, because you never know when that last moment's going to hit.
I think that that's a perfect place for me to ask you my final question, which, as you know, in Coping Together, we talk about how life and mental health relates to our reality today, which is COVID-19. And your point about, like you said, there is no guarantee on that tomorrow, or on the importance of that, appreciating that today and doing that action today. How does that play in with COVID-19, with all of us, and that perspective of, because I think a lot of us have had that realization, whether it's through our own, personal loss of someone or something that was very important to us. I think a lot of people have faced that. And how do they, I guess, move forward in the situation? And how do the rest of us move forward?
I think for me, and I'll speak for myself because I haven't walked a single step in anyone else's journey. So I don't think it would be fair for me to speak on behalf of we. But in this case, when it comes to COVID-19 and some of the other things that we're able to experience, not only in this country, but all over the world, I look at this as a perfect time for me to be able to take a step back, reflect upon the whole journey, and then utilize those questions of, what am I here to learn, and what is this here to teach me? Because there's something beautiful that has formed throughout this time. And that is, yes, we haven't had an opportunity to, let's say, connect with people in person. But does that mean that we can't connect with people at all? Zoom and some of these other virtual platforms create probably some of the better opportunities as well. Because if I live in Texas, I no longer have to go to Florida to have a conversation like this. So I think it's really about looking at it through the lens of, what is this here to teach me? What is the adversity? What is the challenge? Even understanding that, what is adversity? What does adversity mean to you? To me, it means an opportunity to reflect, but at the same time, I think adversity is one of my greatest teachers, because it gives me no other option. Like, I have to choose. I can't just hang out there. If I hang out there, then I'm going to be swallowed by the circumstances at hand. I have to go one way or another, or some other way in between. And that's what I think COVID, as well as some of these other events, really present, is an opportunity to do a deep dive, but also ask yourself the question of, what is this here to teach me?
Wow. Well, thank you so much for your opinion on that, and your whole, again, sharing your, not just your story, but, that journey of what you've been through, getting through it, and moving forward today. And I think that I really love that you say, like you said, you can't speak for anybody else because you haven't stepped in their shoes for a second.
Right.
And so I think that's something that we all, moving forward can consider, is that it goes back to our own experience. But with that being said, I just appreciate you coming on the show so much. Thank you again for being here. To all of you at home, please check out Overcoming Odds. Please feel free to check out Oleg's TED Talk. I know I'm going to go watch it right now. But thank you again so much for being here. To all of you, thank you for watching. If you have any topics you want to hear us talk about, please reach out to us at the Mental Health Association. If you need any resources, please reach out to us. And again, please check out Overcoming Odds. But with that, thank you so much, and I will see you all next time. Thank you.